And for candidate number 1, I'm gonna name Jordan Goodwin, maybe the most likely player for that spot and definitely a pretty hot candidate for that spot. After being elevated to a two-way contract, again from their G League team, he's immediately entered the rotation and thus stayed in the rotation too. Only 3 games so far with their team, but has been pretty impressive so far, averaging about 10 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, and that's really good as a guard. 1.3 assists per game, 1 steal per game, shooting 59.1% from the field, 42.9% from 3, albeit on a very limited volume, and overall bring great energy to their team. Whether we're talking about rebounding, defense, or simply going after a loose ball, definitely is vying for that roster spot. But now after following a pretty disappointing game, not a terrible game, but definitely not as good compared to his first 2. You know how Laker fans can be, they tend to be very up and down with players, so I wanted to get a feel for how you guys feeling about him, how the current Laker crowd's feeling about him, and how they feel about elevating him to their 15-man roster. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it. I love the energy that he plays with. You know, it's very rare to find a guard that plays with that much energy, even going after offensive rebounds and simply rebounds in general, and simply playing that hard to begin with. But again, after coming off a little bit of a letdown game, showing his weaknesses a little bit more, the 3-point shooting not being that good, and overall being a 31% career 3-point shooter, albeit about a 42% corner 3-point shooter, so you can kind of get around that with him, but overall not being that efficient on offense, more so being a defender, more of a energy guy, and not really a guy you can really trust that much on offense, or at least not consistently. Would you want to elevate him to their 15-man roster, or would you maybe take a different player? Well, the good thing here is that they do have a little bit more time to figure that out. Like I mentioned about the playoff eligibility deadline, that's on March 1st, but that's only for free agents, not guys that are currently affiliated with the team. So if they did want to elevate Jordan Goodwin, they could actually wait all the way up until the postseason and go from elevating him from a 2-way contract to their actual 15-man roster, and he still would be playoff eligible. And with that in mind, they'll likely take their time to evaluate him. I think I'd call him their leading candidate right now, but definitely not their only candidate. And after him, I think we gotta mention another 2-way contract for them, which that happens to be Christian Koloko. Kind of out of the rotation, being in and out of the rotation, but depending on the health of Jackson Hayes and the playability, the overall production of Alex Len, he might find himself back into the rotation. In my opinion, he probably shouldn't have left it to begin with. Yes, he is fairly matchup dependent, but not as matchup dependent compared to Alex Len. Alex Len might be more productive in some matchups, but I think overall Koloko might be more valuable and more playable in every matchup compared to Alex Len. And although the stats might not look that good for him, on the season only playing about 8.5 minutes per game, scoring 2.2 points per game, grabbing 2.2 rebounds per game, only 0.3 blocks per game. If you've actually been watching him play, he's been decent, albeit unspectacular. Some games looking pretty good, but I like the energy that he plays with, tries hard on defense, rebounds fairly well, definitely runs the court very hard, that's probably my favorite part about him. Then of course being that lob threat for them too. Something that Luka Doncic really likes to play with and kind of needs to have around him. It's such a big part of his offense that it's kind of a requirement for him. LeBron obviously likes it too, so gotta have at least one, and really in my opinion 2 of them within the rotation, or at least available to play with. Jackson Hayes is obviously one of them, a great lob threat, but if he's hurt or simply not available to play, Alex Len is not a great lob threat, a decent one, but definitely not athletic compared to Jackson Hayes or even Christian Koloko. And from that standpoint, I think about giving Koloko more playing time, whether it be for the matchup dependent thing over Alex Len, or him actually outplaying Alex Len, probably not likely for Hayes, but you never know I guess, then yes, he definitely would be up for consideration. Obviously a lot he has to prove yet, a lot he'd have to do in limited minutes, but you can never completely rule it out. I think he has good potential, has shown good moments, and maybe could be helpful in some matchups and even more helpful than Alex Len and or Jackson Hayes. I definitely think about it. Obviously a lot he has to prove yet, but I would not completely rule it out.